Before we dive into today's story, please subscribe to Cheating Tales Lab. That would help us a lot. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Howard Steele's eyes narrowed as he scanned the quarterly reports spread across his desk. The numbers were good, better than good. They were exceptional. Quantum Innovations was poised to dominate the tech market for another year. He allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. 20 years of ruthless business acumen had built this empire, and he'd be damned if anyone tried to take it from him. The insistent buzzing of his phone cut through his concentration like a bandsaw. Howard glanced down, ready to silence it, when the hospital's number flashed across the screen. A jolt of adrenaline surged through him, primal and electric. "This is Howard Steele," he answered, voice steady despite the sudden hammering of his heart. The nurse's voice was professional calm. It did nothing to quell the rising tide of parental dread. "Mr. Steele, your son Simon has been admitted with injuries. He's asking for you." Howard was already moving, long legs eating up the distance to the elevator. "I'm on my way." The drive to the hospital was a blur of traffic lights and horn blasts. Howard's mind raced through possibilities. A car accident? A bar fight? Simon wasn't the reckless type, but at 19, who knew what trouble he could have stumbled into? The emergency room assaulted his senses, the sharp tang of disinfectant, the cacophony of beeping machines and hushed voices. Howard spotted Simon immediately, hunched on an exam table. His son's usually confident demeanor was gone, replaced by something small and broken. His left arm was in a cast, and bruises were already blooming on his face like dark flowers. "Dad," Simon croaked, his voice raw. Tears welled in his red-rimmed eyes. Howard crossed the room in 3 strides, placing a gentle hand on Simon's uninjured shoulder. "What happened, son?" Simon swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing. "I saw Mom with Steve." He paused, the words seemingly stuck in his throat. "In your bedroom." The world tilted sideways for a moment. Howard's grip on Simon's shoulder tightened, though his face remained impassive. He'd built an empire on his ability to mask his emotions, to never show weakness. Now, that skill was being put to its ultimate test. "Tell me everything," he said, voice low and controlled. The story spilled out of Simon in ragged bursts. Walking in on Lana and their neighbor, Steve Shelton, tangled together on the bed Howard had shared with his wife for 20 years. The shock, the confusion, the attempt to call his father. Then Steve, all drunken aggression, grappling with Simon, the sickening crack as his arm broke against the doorframe, and Lana helping Steve lock her own son in the guest room before they both fled like thieves in the night. As Simon finished, a maelstrom of emotions raged behind Howard's carefully neutral expression. Betrayal, white-hot and searing. Anger, a slow-burning coal in the pit of his stomach. Concern for his son, the only person who truly mattered now. "I'll handle this," Howard said, squeezing Simon's shoulder. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "You're safe now. That's what's important." Simon nodded, some of the tension easing from his frame. He trusted his father implicitly. Howard Steele was a force of nature, a man who made things happen through sheer force of will. If he said he'd handle it, it would be handled. Howard left the hospital with a plan already forming. Also, Howard noticed Simon's injuries were not that serious. It seemed like he over-exaggerated his injuries. Simon might lied, but Howard didn't think about it too much. Right now, all he can think about is confronting Lana and Steve. He drove home, the familiar streets now seeming alien and hostile. The house loomed before him, a monument to 2 decades of lies. Inside, the silence was oppressive. Howard moved through the rooms like a ghost, noting the signs of Lana's hasty departure. Dresser drawers hung open, hangers scattered on the closet floor. In the master bedroom, the sheets were rumpled, reeking of betrayal and cheap cologne. A quick check of his home office confirmed his suspicions. The safe was empty, cleared of cash and crucial documents. Howard's jaw clenched. This wasn't just infidelity. This was theft. Acting on instinct honed by years of cutthroat business deals, Howard drove to Steve's house. As he pulled up, he spotted them, Lana and Steve, loading suitcases into Steve's ostentatious sports car. They moved with the easy familiarity of longtime lovers, their betrayal on full display. Cold fury crystallized in Howard's veins. He approached, footsteps measured and deliberate. Going somewhere? His voice cut through the night air like a whip crack. Lana froze, guilt and defiance warring on her face. Steve, never the brightest bulb, tried to puff himself up to look intimidating. He wilted under Howard's arctic glare. "Howard, please," Lana began, her voice tight with panic. "It's not what you think." Howard didn't let her finish. His fist connected with Steve's jaw with a satisfying crunch. The younger man stumbled back, blood trickling from his split lip. "You broke my son's arm," Howard said, his voice eerily calm. "Now I'm going to break you." What followed was a symphony of pure aggression from Howard. Howard's fist rained down on Steve, years of pent-up rage finding release. He barely registered Lana's screams, her attempts to pull him off. When he finally stepped back, Steve was a crumpled heap on the driveway, moaning pitifully. Howard turned to Lana, his eyes cold and hard. "We're done. Don't bother coming home. You've made your choice." As he walked away, he caught snippets of their panicked conversation. Steve, spitting blood. "This wasn't part of the plan. We need those files." Lana, hissing back. "Shut up, you idiot. He might hear you." Howard's mind whirred into overdrive. Files? Plan? The betrayal ran deeper than he'd imagined. This wasn't just about a failing marriage. This was about his life's work. The next morning found Howard in a private conference room at Quantum Innovations. Across from him sat Frank Harper, the company's legal counsel and Howard's oldest friend. Frank's face was a mask of concern. "Howard, I'm sorry about Lana," Frank began, his voice gruff with emotion. "But something doesn't add up here. Lana's actions, they seem too calculated." Howard nodded, sharing his suspicions about the overheard conversation. As they delved into the intricacies of divorce proceedings, Howard's phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed on the screen, followed by a text message that made his blood run cold. "Back off, or everything you've built will come crashing down." Frank's expression darkened as Howard showed him the message. "Howard, I think we're dealing with something much bigger than infidelity here." "Agreed," Howard said, his voice grim. He revealed the final piece of the puzzle, the emptied safe, the missing documents. "They're after Quantum, Frank. This goes beyond Lana and Steve. Someone's pulling their strings." Frank leaned back, fingers steepled in thought. "We need to move carefully. If word of this gets out, the shareholders will panic. We could be looking at a hostile takeover." Howard's eyes hardened. He'd built Quantum from the ground up, turning a garage startup into a tech giant. He'd be damned if he'd let anyone take it from him. "We fight," he said, voice low and dangerous. "We find out who's behind this, and we bury them." Frank nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of his mouth. This was the Howard he knew, ruthless, determined, unstoppable when his back was against the wall. "Where do we start?" Frank asked, already reaching for his legal pad. Howard's mind raced, connections forming and plans taking shape. "We need to secure the company first. Lock down all sensitive projects, change access codes. Then we follow the money. Lana's been acting strange for months. There must be a paper trail." As they strategized, Howard felt a familiar fire igniting in his chest. This wasn't just about saving his marriage or his reputation anymore. This was war. And Howard Steele didn't lose wars. "One more thing," Howard said, his voice cold as a Siberian winter. "I want them to suffer, Frank. Lana, Steve, whoever's pulling their strings. I want them to regret the day they crossed me." Frank nodded, no judgment in his eyes. He'd known Howard long enough to understand. This wasn't about vengeance. This was justice, served Steele style. As they delved deeper into their plans, Neither man noticed the small device blinking silently under the conference table. Someone was listening, and the game was far from over. Howard Steele's office was a fortress of glass and steel, much like the man himself. He sat behind his imposing desk, fingers steepled, as he faced Ruby Winters. The private investigator's reputation preceded her, discreet, thorough, and utterly ruthless. Just the kind of ally Howard needed in this war. "I need everything on Steve Shelton and my soon-to-be ex-wife, Lana," Howard said, his voice as cold and sharp as a scalpel. "Leave no stone unturned." Ruby nodded, her eyes glinting with professional interest. "Consider it done, Mr. Steele. Anything specific you're looking for?" "Anything that doesn't add up," Howard replied. "I have a feeling this goes deeper than a simple affair." As Ruby left to begin her investigation, Howard turned his attention to the financial reports spread across his desk. The numbers blurred before his eyes, his mind replaying the events of the past few days. The betrayal, Simon's injuries, the confrontation with Lana and Steve. Each memory stoked the cold fury burning in his chest. A knock at the door interrupted his dark musings. Lawrence Stanley, Howard's business partner and COO of Quantum Innovations, entered with a grim expression. "Howard, we need to talk," Lawrence said, his normally jovial face etched with concern. "There are some financial discrepancies I can't explain." Howard's eyes narrowed. "Show me." As Lawrence laid out the troubling figures, Howard's suspicions crystallized into certainty. This wasn't just about Lana's infidelity. This was corporate espionage, a coordinated attack on everything he'd built. "Lock it down," Howard ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Change all access codes. Restrict information flow. I want to know every person who's accessed our systems in the last 6 months." Lawrence nodded, already reaching for his phone. "What about the board? They'll want answers." "They'll get them when I'm ready," Howard replied. "For now, this stays between us." As Lawrence left to implement the security measures, Howard's phone buzzed. A text from Ruby. "Found something. Meet me at your house. Alone." The drive home was a blur of strategic planning and barely contained rage. Howard pulled into his driveway, noting the unfamiliar car parked across the street. Ruby's, no doubt. He found her in his home office, her expression grim. "You're not going to like this, Mr. Steele." "I already don't like any of this," Howard retorted. "What did you find?" Ruby held up a tiny device, no larger than a button. "This was hidden in your desk lamp. High-end stuff, live audio feed. There are probably more scattered throughout the house." Howard's blood ran cold, then hot with fury. They'd been watching him, listening to his every move, in his own home. "There's more," Ruby continued. "Steve Shelton? He's got priors for fraud, suspected ties to organized crime. And your wife. She's been making large cash withdrawals from your joint account for months, you might know that. Hundreds of thousands of dollars." Howard's mind raced, connecting the dots. The missing documents from his safe, the financial discrepancies at Quantum, the surveillance. This was no impulsive affair. This was a calculated attack. "What about Simon?" Howard asked, a rare note of concern creeping into his voice. Ruby's expression softened slightly. "Your son's clean, far as I can tell, but he might know more than he's letting on. Kids notice things, even if they don't understand what they're seeing." Howard nodded, already formulating his next move. "Keep digging. I want to know every skeleton in their closets, every dirty secret, and sweep the house for more bugs." As Ruby left to continue her investigation, Howard sank into his office chair. The leather creaked, a familiar sound in a world that had suddenly become alien and hostile. His phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. "Tick-tock, Howard. How much are you willing to lose?" Howard's grip tightened on the phone, his knuckles white. They thought they had him cornered, outmaneuvered. They had no idea who they were dealing with. A knock at the door startled him from his thoughts. Simon stood in the doorway, his broken arm in a sling, his face a mask of guilt and fear. "Dad," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, I think, I think I knew something was wrong with Mom. I should have said something sooner." Howard's expression softened, just a fraction. "Komein, son, tell me everything." As Simon poured out his observations. Hush phone calls, mysterious meetings, Lana's sudden interest in Howard's work projects. Howard felt a grim satisfaction. His son was observant, sharp, a true steel. "You did the right thing by telling me now," Howard said, squeezing Simon's uninjured shoulder. "We'll handle this. Together." Simon nodded, some of the tension leaving his frame. He trusted his father implicitly, knew that Howard Steele was a force to be reckoned with. As Simon left, Howard's resolve hardened. Lana and Steve had made a critical error. They'd threatened not just his business, but his family, and Howard Steele protected what was his. He picked up his phone, dialing Lawrence. "Meet me at the office. It's time to go on the offensive." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Howard and Lawrence worked tirelessly, setting up firewalls, tracking data access, laying traps for their unseen enemies. Ruby's investigation continued to uncover layers of deception and betrayal. It was late one night when everything came to a head. Howard was driving home, his mind churning with plans and countermoves, when he noticed something off about his car's handling. The brakes felt spongy, unresponsive. With a surge of adrenaline, Howard realized what was happening. He'd driven this road 1,000 times, knew every curve and dip. He managed to guide the car off the road, narrowly avoiding a catastrophic crash. As he stood by the roadside, waiting for a tow truck, Howard's phone buzzed. The unknown number again. "Next time, you won't be so lucky." A cold smile spread across Howard's face. They'd just made their final mistake. Now, it was his turn to strike. The next morning found Howard in his office, facing Lawrence and Ruby. The atmosphere was tense, charged with anticipation. "They tried to kill me last night," Howard said without preamble. "Tampered with my brakes." Lawrence's face paled, but Ruby merely nodded, as if confirming a suspicion. "So, what's our play?" Lawrence asked, his voice steady despite the shock. Howard's eyes glinted with a predatory light. "We set a trap, feed them false information about a major deal, something too tempting to resist." Ruby leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of deal?" "A merger," Howard replied. "One that would triple Quantum's value overnight. The kind of inside information that could make someone very, very rich. They'll definitely come to steal, and we'll catch them red-handed." As they hammered out the details of their plan, Howard felt a familiar rush of adrenaline. The game was entering its final stages, and he intended to emerge victorious. Lana, Steve, and whoever was pulling their strings had no idea what they'd unleashed. Howard Steele was coming for them, and he would show no mercy. Howard Steele's office hummed with tension, the air thick with anticipation. He stood at the window, gazing out at the city skyline, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Behind him, Lawrence and Ruby waited, their faces grim with determination. "It's time," Howard said, turning to face his allies. "Let's spring the trap." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. They had leaked information about a major cash transaction happening at Howard's house. Bait too tempting for Lana and Steve to resist. Now, all that remained was to wait. As night fell, Howard's expansive home transformed into a high-tech command center. Hidden cameras covered every angle. Microphones picked up the slightest whisper. In a room upstairs, Lawrence monitored the feeds, ready to signal at the first sign of intrusion. Howard paced the living room, every muscle coiled tight. This was more than just catching thieves. This was about retribution, about making Lana and Steve pay for their betrayal. A soft beep from Howard's earpiece broke the silence. Lawrence's voice came through, tense but controlled. Movement at the back gate. 2 figures, approaching the house. Howard's lips curled into a cold smile. Right on schedule. He moved silently through the darkened house, positioning himself in the shadows of his study. Minutes ticked by, each second stretching into eternity. Then, a soft click, the unmistakable sound of a lock being picked. Howard's hand tightened on the grip of the firearm concealed in his jacket, not out of fear, but anticipation. The study door eased open. Two silhouettes slipped inside, one tall and bulky, the other slender and graceful. Steve and Lana, moving with the practiced ease of experienced burglars. Howard waited, letting them move deeper into the room. He saw Steve head for the safe hidden behind a painting, while Lana made straight for the computer. Looking for something? Howard's voice cut through the darkness like a whip crack. The intruders froze. In one fluid motion, Howard flicked on the lights and leveled his firearm at them. Lana's face drained of color. "Howard, please." "Save it," Howard snarled. "I know everything. Your plans, the embezzlement, the frame job you had planned. Did you really think you could outsmart me?" Steve, his face still bruised from their last encounter, lunged for something in his jacket. Howard's finger tightened on the trigger, but before he could fire, another figure burst into the room. "Don't move." Simon's voice rang out, strong and clear. Howard allowed himself a moment of pride. His son stood tall, his own firearm trained steadily on Steve. The cast on his arm was gone. It had never been real, just another part of their elaborate ruse. Steve's eyes darted between father and son, realizing he was outmatched. Slowly, he raised his hands. Lana, her composure cracking, turned to Simon. "Baby, please. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Simon cut her off, his voice cold. "I understood when I caught you with Steve. I understood when you helped him lock me in that room. And I understand now, watching you try to steal from us." The look of betrayal on Lana's face was almost comical. She had never suspected that her son, the one she thought she had fooled, had been playing her all along. Howard stepped forward, his firearm never wavering. "It's over. The police are on their way. But before they get here, I want answers. Who are you working for?" Steve's face twisted into a sneer. "You think this ends with us? We're just the tip of the iceberg, Steele. There are people out there who want to see you burn, and they won't stop." His words cut off in a gasp as Simon, moving with lightning speed, drove his fist into Steve's stomach. "Answer the question," Simon growled. But before Steve could speak, Lana made her move. With a desperate cry, she lunged for Howard's firearm. Time seemed to slow. Howard saw the wild look in Lana's eyes, saw her fingers reaching for the weapon. In that split second, he made his choice. The shot echoed through the room like a thunderclap. Lana stumbled back, clutching her shoulder. Blood seeped between her fingers, staining her designer blouse crimson. "Dad!" Simon's voice was sharp with shock. Howard's face was a mask of cold fury. She made her choice. The sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder by the second. Steve, seeing his last chance slipping away, made a desperate grab for Lana's purse. But Simon was faster, tackling him to the ground just as the police burst through the door. What followed was a blur of activity. Paramedics tending to Lana, police securing Steve, detectives taking statements. Through it all, Howard stood like a rock, his eyes never leaving Lana and Steve as they were led away in handcuffs. As the chaos subsided, Simon approached his father. "It's really over?" Howard nodded, allowing himself to relax for the first time in weeks. "It's over. You did good, son." Simon's smile was tinged with sadness. I wish it hadn't come to this." Howard placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. They made their choices. Now they faced the consequences. As dawn broke over the city, Howard stood in his study, surveying the aftermath of the night's events. Lawrence and Ruby joined him, their faces showing a mixture of relief and grim satisfaction. "The board's going to want answers," Lawrence said. Howard nodded. "They'll get them. Every dirty detail. It's time to clean house, root out any other moles in the company." Ruby handed him a thick file. "This should help. Everything I uncovered about their operation, including some names you'll want to look into. Howard took the file, his mind already racing with plans. This wasn't just about saving his company anymore. This was about sending a message. No one crossed Howard Steele and got away with it. Months passed. The trial was a media sensation. Every sordid detail splashed across headlines. Howard took the stand, his testimony a masterclass in controlled fury. He laid out the extent of Lana and Steve's betrayal, backed by mountains of evidence. As the verdict was read guilty on all counts, Howard felt no joy, no satisfaction, only a grim sense of justice served. In the aftermath, quantum innovations emerged stronger than ever. The board, impressed by Howard's handling of the crisis, granted him even more control. New security measures were implemented, turning the company into a digital fortress. Simon, having proven his mettle, took on a larger role in the company. Father and son worked side by side, rebuilding what had been threatened, creating something even more powerful. One evening, as they stood in Howard's office overlooking the city, Simon turned to his father. "Do you ever regret how things turned out? With Mom, I mean." Howard's gaze remained fixed on the skyline, his expression unreadable. "Regret is a luxury we can't afford, Simon. She made her choices. We made ours. All that matters now is moving forward." Simon nodded, understanding the harsh truth in his father's words. They had weathered a storm of betrayal and corporate intrigue, emerging not just victorious, but stronger. The Steele legacy would continue, forged in fire, tempered by adversity. As night fell over the city, Howard Steele allowed himself a small smile. He had faced down his enemies, protected what was his, and come out on top. And if anyone else dared to challenge him, well, they would learn the hard way that crossing Howard Steele was a mistake they would regret for the rest of their lives. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.